For Europe and NATO, a Russian invasion is no longer unthinkable. Amid crumbling U.S. support for Ukraine and Donald Trump's rising candidacy, European nations and NATO are making plans to take on Russia by themselves. NATO has been training to repel a Russian invasion, like this exercise in Nowa Deba, Poland, last May that included Slovenian, American, and Romanian forces. President Vladimir V. Putin of Russia once proclaimed the dissolution of the Soviet Empire the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century. At the time, back in 2005, few expected him to do anything about it. But then came Russia's occupation of Abkhazia and South Ossetia from Georgia in 2008, its backing for Ukrainian separatists and the annexation of Crimea in 2014, and, most resoundingly, the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Now, with the rise of former President Donald J. Trump, who in the past has vowed to leave NATO and recently threatened never to come to the aid of his alliance allies, concerns are rising among European nations that Mr. Putin could invade a NATO nation over the coming decade and that they might have to face his forces without U.S. support. That could happen in as few as 5 years after a conclusion of the war in Ukraine, according to some officials and experts who believe that would be enough time for Moscow to rebuild and rearm its military. We have always kind of suspected that this is the only existential threat that we have, Major General Veiko Velopalm, the commander of the Estonian Army's mainland combat division, said of a possible Russian invasion. The past few years have also made it very, very clear that NATO as a military alliance, a lot of countries, are not ready to conduct large-scale operations, meaning, in simple human language, a lot of NATO militaries are not ready to fight Russia. General Palm said during an interview in December. So it's not very comforting. Anxiety over what experts describe as Mr. Putin's imperial ambitions have long been a part of the psyche of states that border Russia or are uncomfortably close. I think for Estonia, it was 1991, when his country's alarm bells started ringing, General Palm said wryly, referring to the year that Estonia declared independence from the crumbling Soviet Union. Just as Mr. Putin played down the Biden administration's warnings that he was planning to invade Ukraine, Moscow has dismissed concerns that Russia is planning to attack NATO. The head of Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service, Sergei Naryshkin, said in an interview last week with the state-owned news agency RI Novosti that they are part of a Western disinformation campaign to stir up discontent against Moscow. Europe's worry has been further fueled in recent months by Mr. Putin's militarization of the Russian economy and huge spending increases for its army and weapons industry while, at the same time, some Republicans in Congress look to limit American aid to Ukraine. If anyone thinks this is only about Ukraine, they're fundamentally mistaken, President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine warned at the World Economic Forum this month. Possible directions and even a timeline of a new Russian aggression beyond Ukraine become more and more obvious. NATO maintains that it is prepared to defend the borders of all 31 member states which, collectively, have increased national defense spending by an estimated $190 billion since 2014, when Russia first invaded Ukraine. But that was the start of building back what had become a hollowed-out military network across Europe in the decades following the end of the Cold War, a process that still could take years, analysts say.